Computer. Let's see how this works out. Awesome. Welcome again, everybody. And tonight we've got a group of prominent and experienced panel members here to discuss their opinions, perspectives, experiences, ideas regarding the future of agility and how we might all better meet these and other challenges. So the way the event's going to work tonight is we're going to have some questions that we've already determined that we're going to be asking our panelists to provide answers to, but probably about halfway through the session, we're going to open up the questions for you folks to ask, and we will ask you to put those in chat. We will glean various questions from there and ask our panelists, and let's see where it goes. We're lucky here to have tonight Shannon Ewan, who currently serves as CEO for IC Agile in Alexandria, Virginia. She's an experienced Agile leader, coach, facilitator, and trainer with extensive business and information technology experience with Fortune 100 companies, small businesses, and U.S. government agencies. We're honored to have Bob Galen here, the author of Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching, head moose at www.agile-moose.com, and well-intentioned Agile community supporter. And by the way, has also provided the Zoom tonight. Thank you. So more than 100 people could be here. Thank you for that. We also have Melanie Ossie, who may be a familiar face to some of you. We've had her in a lot of events before. Most of the time as participants, but a lot of times as speakers too. So thank you. She is a tech systems specialization lead with over 5 years of Agile recruitment experience. She's passionate about helping Agile people find the right career opportunity. Also welcoming Ronica Roth here, co-founder and principal at the Welcome Elephant, certified Scrum trainer emeritus, passionate about helping leadership teams practice with the words and behaviors that create awesome organizational cultures where humans have fun working together to build great stuff. I have taken a lot of advice from Ronica over the years and have learned a heck of a lot from her. So thank you for being here. We've got the brilliant Eric Willicke. You are, come on. Has spent the last 15 years helping leaders and their companies overcome challenges while achieving agility. His focus is on leaders who are striving to create better companies in service to the triple bottom line, profit, people, and planet. And I've learned a heck of a lot from Eric over the years as well. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for attending. So I think we'd like to start out and go ahead and ask some questions here. So this is really for all of our panelists. We do kind of a round robin thing. What are some of the future trends or hopes you see related to agility? And where do you think the focus is shifting from and to? Why don't we go ahead and start with Ronica, and then I'll go to Eric, Shannon, Mel, and then Bob. That works for that one.
Cool. Thank you. The thing that I see lately is probably very biased by my own choices and the kind of work I'm trying to attract as a consultant, but a definite focus from the top on culture, not just practices. So I used to say it a million years ago, I'm secretly trying to change the culture of your organization, but that's not what you're hiring me for. But that's what I'm going to try to do. And now I have people coming to me, executives coming to me and saying, I really want a culture in which people collaborate better. I really want a culture in which we can have hard conversations. I really want a culture of innovation. So those words are coming out of their mouths. And so not necessarily instead of, I think, but I think it's an and, not an or. So that's what I see and want to see more of and hope to influence.
Awesome.
Eric, you're next.
Yep.
Thanks, Ronica. Part of that culture, I think I'm going to actually look outside of companies for a moment at the Agile community and the culture there. And I think it's hard to spend too much time as an Agilist on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever and not see people tearing each other down or tearing down each other's goals and ideas and things like that. And the trend that I see is that one, the differences in how we approach agility are going to continue to get bigger. There's too many specialties, too many domains, too many different elements of modern product development and delivery and business and everything else for one person to be the well-rounded coach of all the things. We can help, we can facilitate, but we're not going to be experts in all those spaces. And my hope for the future is that while that trend of more disparity, more diversity in how we have to approach creating agility continues, that we learn to work together and actually be maybe a cross-functional team of agilists working to support people and grow across all these dimensions instead of trying to continue pushing that my dimension is best, or Ronica's culture dimension is best, or the craftsmanship dimension is best. The answer is going to have to be a yes and. So I hope to see a lot more yes and from our communities.
Awesome. Shannon, would you like to play in on that?
Yes. Oh, yes, and both of the yes and add on that
It's a theme.
yeah, really seeing a shift from role, really dedicated roles into skills and capabilities. So looking at a lot of agile ways of working as becoming more integrated, a bit more habitual in some cases, and still needed and needing to show up in different ways and different skill combinations, et cetera. Especially kind of looking at the shift from agile coaching as a dedicated pervasive role to really looking at the skills that agile coaches bring as being needed across a variety of roles. I'd also say kind of doubling down on leadership development and culture. I think when people talk about where a lot of transformations have stalled, they do point to leadership and leadership buy-in and needing leadership to model certain behaviors, et cetera. And I firmly believe that our world needs a different type of leadership than today's organizations do as well. And so I still see tremendous opportunity there in that space and for leadership at all levels of organizations.
Awesome, Shannon. How about you, Mel? What are your thoughts?
Yes, and some things that I would like to add is I am an agile recruiter. And so I want to see some more opportunities for the people that I work with and my team across the nation. As we know, as we've seen on LinkedIn, various different news channels, um, a lot of negative things are happening in terms of layoffs, and it's been really hard. So I'm hoping for positivity. We know what happened in 2020 when the world shut down. A lot of people were laid off. There was a lot of uncertainty. Um, there's been a lot of uncertainty. So what goes down must come up. So my hope is for more positivity, realism, and then more opportunities.
Awesome. Bob, would love to hear from you on this one.
Sure. I'm going to say not a yes and no but, because I don't want to follow everyone. No, it's really, I mean, I agree with what I've heard. Things come to my mind is, and these are all hopes, so not observations on trending and then hopes. I hope there's less agile industrial complex. So what would be indicators of that? Less certifications, less smaller frameworks, just less focus on the dollars and more focus on agility and value. Sort of reduce the I don't want to remove, I don't want to dissolve it, just reduce it in size. Second thing that comes to mind is have agile coaching become reimagined. I think we're confused about I get the skills versus roles thing, and that's true. But I don't know if anyone knows what agile coaching really is, or a clarity of agile coaching. So can we reimagine it and reclarify it and the value that it has organizationally? And then the third hope I have, and I think it aligns with maybe what Veronica was saying, is more partnerships with leadership. I think we've been adversarial to leaders for decades in Agile, or non-inclusive, or however you want to. Yes, they pay the bills, but I'd like to see us really start co-creating transformation and co-creating Agile and gaining value, and at least take steps towards that. And I see that trending. We're starting to do that. I'd love to see that accelerate. So those are three for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I've heard some coaches don't like to use the word agile or agility in the work they do. So what are you folks seeing and what are your thoughts? Is it no longer an aspiration? Is there a reputation issue? Is agility already pervasive or is something else going on?
I will jump in on that because I tried to dump the word agility and failed. Eric is smiling because he was there for that when Rally/CA ended and we were starting a new thing. I'm like, let's not talk about agility. I don't want to be in a box anymore. Is kind of what I felt at the time. And then I came back to it because I'm like, well, I mean, the shorthand for what it is I want to bring into help a company achieve, the shorthand for that is agile, right? So I want collaborative teams, small teams, and good collaboration, and I don't know, iterative and incremental, and value flow, and blah blah blah. You know, blah blah blah. I could say all those things, or I could just say agile. But here's the thing: is I think the reason it in some ways it is going away as like people don't want to use the term. I don't know about coaches, but like so like there's an executive I'm working with now, chief digital officer. I am there to coach her and to also help the organization that she's building be successful. And she and I talk about agile because that's a shorthand and we mean the same thing by it. And I know that because we've had hours of conversation. But if I say agile to someone else in that company, then everyone has a different understanding of what that means. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And you know, some of it is all by reputation and some of it is by experience. Like nobody's never seen it anymore. And so it just doesn't have it becomes not a meaningful word unless you establish with somebody what it means. Like that's how language works, right? So that I think that's what I've been seeing.
Yeah, making that distinction, right? Who else wants to play on this question?
I think I'll jump in. I saw Bob raise his hand, so I'll be brief. And following up on what Ronica said, but also going back to Bob's opening comments, there's a lot, I still see a worrisome trend of agile for agile's sake. We're doing agile to become agile, instead of doing agile to achieve some set of results, to advance the business in some way, to achieve some transformation goal. I've lost who posted it, but there was in the middle of all the social media commentary that people are commenting on in the chat, I saw a really interesting one that went through a whole bunch of case studies of failed agile efforts. And it made this point like, well, the only two that had any real results were also business transformations. And I'm like, well, those are the two that actually did it right. They used agility as a component of achieving something else bigger. And I think the more we push to just be agile, like it's its own thing, the more we're going to continue to see push off because it's not relevant. It's not connected to the goals of the leadership and the people that are caring about it or sponsoring it and paying for it, perhaps, if you want to look at it a different way. So that relevancy, it's like it needs to be tied to a bigger mission and a bigger purpose, or it's kind of doesn't matter. And I also try to drop agile for that reason. But also it turns out I kind of had to refer to it somehow. Thanks, Ronica.
Bob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it depends, and I think words matter. I was teaching a leadership class once to a C-level leadership team, and one of the last things they did at the end of the class is we were trying to craft their go-forward strategy based on lessons from the class, and they decided that agile terminology was not serving them well. And they decided to drop it, that it wasn't serving them well amongst themselves, and it wasn't serving, they had understanding, but it particularly wasn't serving them well with their clients and with their board. And I thought a tear almost came to my eye. I'm like, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's drop it for you. But I have clients where it's a useful set of terminology and they're using it. So I think it depends, as long as it has this positive sort of, it creates this positive understanding and framework of what really is are the goals.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to play in on this one?
Echoing a lot of what's been said, it's where it has value and resonance and brings together the sort of the meaning and the essence that we're going for. I think it makes sense to use the term, and also as a bridge to kind of bringing everyone back to the overall goals, which are going to be different in different contexts. But one of the things that's even just hearing the way Ken introduced the point of this meetup, it was learn, adapt, deliver value, honor customers and workers, enjoy what we do, right? Like that's really the essence of what we're going for. And then in both Ronica and Eric's introductions, they talk about that, create awesome organizational cultures where humans have fun working together to build great things. And then going for the triple bottom line of what profit, people and planet, right? So I think it's kind of bringing back that essence of what we were going for with Agile as a means to an end, and really combining those terms and sort of recreating the narrative that we may have been going for kind of from the beginning.
Mhm. Do we feel there's a reputational issue?
I think where Agile initiatives or transformation initiatives have fallen short, or possibly become too framework based or too about Agile as the end, not the means, as a lot of people are saying in the chat. I do think that does create baggage. And so I think, similar to what several other folks have said, it's, we really have to align with what does Agile mean in a certain context? Is it better to use certain terms, or to try to redefine the term Agile to mean what we're truly going for as the destination?
I've noticed, and I know others have as well, there seem to be more layoffs related to coaching at the organizational and team level compared to previous years. What are you seeing, and what are your thoughts regarding future outlook? I think, Mel, you were going to take that one, right? First.
Yep. This is where I can definitely jump in as an agile career coach more so than an agile professional. And so what I've been seeing quite So I remember at this exact meetup when we were in person in New Jersey, it was like my third session there. I was still trying to figure out what agile was. And I was like, you guys seem like you're working yourselves out of a job. And obviously that's not the case. And you're making the teams more efficient. But it's too early to say, oh, people are working themselves out of a job. There's not going to be opportunities. They're not going to need scrum masters or agile coaches. I've seen a positive uptake in companies that have traditionally wanted waterfall. They're more open to the word agile and entertaining what it is for their organization. So it's not going away. It has to come back around. There needs to be efficiency within these teams. And I actually think it's more widely known and accepted. So what I've been seeing when talking to clients is there's less pushback when they hear the word agile, but they're not jumping all at once. I need a scrum master right now, and this is what it needs to be. And I don't have any teams for them, and we don't have an agile vision, but we need a scrum master. It's more of a discovery type of conversation. So that's what I've been seeing.
Awesome. Wes has thoughts on it.
Well, I was asking a colleague at lunch yesterday, knowing this conversation was coming, of course, and he leads kind of the practice group, for just to simplify his role. And so part of what he does is provide some of those scrum masters and coaches. And I'm like, are scrum masters still useful for you? And part of that was also inspired by, I had recently met a scrum master who was fairly junior, and I was like, oh, he's not doing all that he could. Anyway, all these things together, what the great conversation I had with my colleague was around just the clarity of, like, what is the job? If the job of coach or scrum master, whatever you title it, is improvement, you're never actually working yourself out of that job. There's no nirvana perfect state where you get there and it's like, well, okay, nobody needs to improve anymore. Also, nobody touch anything, because right, because it'll all fall apart. So, but I think, what my colleague said was, if the scrum master is, or code, we insert either one, but if the scrum master's job is to run ceremonies, no, I don't need that. If the scrum master's job is to own improvement, I need that. I need that a lot. I want more of them, So I thought that was a great insight.
Okay, who else has thoughts on this?
I see Bob's hand up.
I think another thing is like value and sort of your purview. So I'm thinking systemic. I've been talking to Scrum Masters and coaches lately. I think it's no longer valuable, even if it ever was, to just Scrum Master a team and ignore the organization, or to be myopic, or to be localized as a coach. I only do facilitation, or I only do this type. I think we have to look more systemically at the organization, work with leaders, etc. And I do think that separates quite a few Scrum Masters and coaches. It's not maybe a natural progression. I think we could get away with it. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I think organizations, they didn't understand the roles well enough, and they were sort of hoping for value. And I now think the bar is a lot higher for Scrum Masters and for coaches, and to be to have more skills, to have breadth of skills and depth of skills in business domains, but also to be systemically aware. And not just aware, to be able to operate systemically.
Yeah, I mean, as we were preparing this, we were talking about coaching, the challenges that they have, talking about their value proposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who else has thoughts on that?
I'm not sure it's directly tied to layoffs, but maybe more to the overall coaching market. I've seen a trend, especially maybe starting 5 years ago or so. I'm not sure exactly what the timeline was, where people would be successful as a Scrum Master. They'd achieve some pretty awesome things, and their next mindset was, okay, what's the next thing on the ladder? I need to go be a coach. And a lot of those people, their questions to me were, how do I get started as a consultant? Like, I was in the organization, I was visiting as a consultant. They're like, I want to be like you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. What do you actually want to do? You want to help people? You've established this phenomenal network inside the company, and you established this reputation for driving improvement and helping things around you become better. How do you leverage that?
Mm.
And a number of the people I've had this conversation with then don't go independent or go consultant. They actually take a different titled role internally because of that reputation. And it's more like, it's not exactly about layoffs around agility, but it's more like, what's the opportunity for people with that skill set? And do we need to reimagine what that progression looks like? Because frankly, amazing Scrum Masters make awesome managers too, as one perspective.
Mhm.
Real quickly, Eric, off of what you said, I think there's this hope that I can progress quicker, right? Impatience. That I want to, I want to move from Scrum Master to coach and to enterprise coach in 18 months and whatever. So there's the skill part, but we're talking about really nuanced, deep, broad skill sets, and notions of maybe apprenticeship and notions of pairing and working with folks and taking the time to build the profession. And I think there's a lot of impatience around that and wanting to accelerate. These are, they're attractive roles. I hope the future is folks realize, yes, this is a wonderful path, but it takes time to develop that. And it takes a lot of hard work to develop that as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's something certainly to be said for, learning in the School of Hard Knocks to some degree as well. So what do you think the future opportunity is for these folks then? I mean, I know, Eric, you mentioned potentially moving into management. What is the future opportunity for Scrum Masters, coaches, and others playing these roles?
At the enterprise level, I still see tremendous opportunity for the skill sets that enterprise agile coaches bring forward. They're, organizational transformation in many forms, change is not going away. I think many people have said that. In fact, it's accelerating. So it may be a simple matter of how we're talking about it and positioning it and upskilling for it, and kind of, folks who really have the self-awareness around what their limitations are, who else they need to bring in and partner with in order to really work on change at the organizational level. At the team level, you could make a similar argument that, who doesn't want better collaboration amongst teams, who, you know, recognizing that teams are kind of the smallest unit of value creation. However, I could also see moving more into delivery roles at the team level as well. So I think there are many opportunities there. Again, it depends on the context and what people really truly want to do as well, really getting in touch with what are their skills, their passions, where can they bring their capabilities to meet the needs of the teams and organizations they're working with.
Mm.
I think,
like-
yeah, I think about that. It's interesting. Like, it's not always transformation. I mean, I wonder if that's part of it, right? I'm realizing I feel like, you know, for so long I was always coming into a place where it's like we're doing an agile transformation. That is literally the change that we're managing, that we're trying to make happen. But when we're talking about all the roles available, I kind of do want to go back to that improvement thing in the conversation I had with my colleague. Like, organizations don't ever not need improvement. And so how do we, you know, who are the people who can help guide improvements that maintain the things that are agility, whatever those things are that we want. And going back to what you just said, what are the parts that as an individual that I'm really passionate about in that journey of improvement? I also think about there's also always change happening. And, you know, again, one of the places that I'm doing some coaching and consulting right now, it's not an agile transformation. It's a it really is a digital transformation. It's an old school company that has people in call centers and a really bad website. And now they're trying to, you know, what does it mean to become digital first? And as part of that, to make that change happen effectively, the leader wants a culture of agility as part of it, right? So it's also reframing, like, you know, wow, it turns out we're kind of, some of us at least anyway, are actually experts in change management. And so we can help with all kinds of changes, bringing the awesomeness of what's it like to do things that are more fun because we're more collaborative, because we break the thing down into smaller pieces and not, you know, all the things, you know. Which, when I think of it that way, it's infinite number of jobs, infinite number of roles.
Mel, looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up too, what I've been noticing in the market is, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what I've been seeing in the market is a lot of our clients are looking for very specifics. It's not just, I need a Scrum Master for 5+, that has been a Scrum Master for 5+ years. Of course, we get to the root of why do you need 5 years or et cetera. But what I've been noticing is I need a Scrum Master that has a data and analytics background, because rather than, I think it was Bob, I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking, is saying, we just need someone to do like daily stand-ups. It's more, they want them to be more ingrained in the teams. And because the market is so saturated with talent, a lot of talented people are on the market and looking for jobs. Because it's so saturated, clients can be more specific. So I had an agile coach role opportunity for like infrastructure specifically. And, you know, if you haven't coached an infrastructure team, it's 100% remote. There's a lot of people looking for jobs. The clients are being more specific. So that's just something that I've noticed too, to keep a lookout and look at your current experience and how you can play into that. I think that things will change, but right now that's what the market has been yielding.
To tee off of what Mel said, I I think just being a change artist or a change agent, to me that sounds, I'm putting on my executive hat, that sounds peripheral. Like it's someone who's transforming and change and Cotter and things like that. And I'm like, how does that factor into the bottom line? How does that make me money today? How does that, and I understand that. I mean, I sell myself as that, but I think there's this, be a change agent as a Scrum Master, but also have some skin in the game in some domain skills. And there's this balancing act of, I think of it as oscillating between separating from the system and being a change agent and a guide, but then getting in the game and then separating and have some domain experience, have some value beyond the agile gobbledygook. I have some business domain and stuff. Now you have to be careful about the balancing act, but I think coaches, I think that's a trend That's what you're seeing that in jobs, but even if the job didn't require that, where do you demonstrate your value? I don't think it's as clear the value proposition on the change agency side, and it's longer term play. It's much more tactical and sort of transparent on the execution side, on the skin in the game. So I'd like everyone to think about this notion of, I think we need to have skin in the game. Every person working in agile context needs to connect to work getting done in some way, not just talking about work getting done or influencing work getting done.
And okay, Bob, you got me on this one. I almost opened my mouth at the beginning of this cycle, but when future opportunity, I would love to see more Scrum Masters own accountability and responsibility for outcomes and make that part of the goals while still respecting the need to work through influence with all the facilitative tools at our disposal rather than a traditional manner.
Yep.
And I think that would just create a transformative attitude in leaders towards the value of the role compared to Scrum Masters that I've watched literally hold their hands up and say, I can't be accountable or responsible for results. I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm like,
Yep.
well, then what good? Sorry. That's kind of my attitude in the moment.
Yep.
Awesome. Great conversation. So we had another question that came up. Have companies become too rigid about the methodology or mechanics instead of embracing the intent or spirit of Agile?
I definitely think we see a lot of those cases, and just based on the conversation so far here and things going on in the chat, I know looks like other folks have experienced it as well. And there's nothing wrong with frameworks, methodologies, and process, right? It helps folks norm around how work is getting done. And if it becomes too much the focus, then you miss the forest for the trees, right? And really, agility is where you achieve it through people, not process. Process is the means to an end. And when we talk about improvement, we're trying to improve not only what we're delivering, but how we're working. And so if we stick with those same rules, those are there to get us started. But if they become so entrenched that that's all we know, it just becomes another set of rituals and practices, just like what we were trying to replace. And I think back to the early days of teaching, of some of the foundational agile classes out there in the market, and looking at the shuhari concept from Japanese martial arts. It's like, that's the frameworks are the shoe. You got to start there, but you have to keep evolving in order to actually form a new identity, right? So to truly be achieving and going after the business outcomes you're going after. And yeah, so I think there's just a really high risk of sort of losing the pathway when you become too fixated on those rituals.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the phrase I never want to hear is because it's why are we doing this? Why do we do X? Why do we do this practice? Because it's agile, because we were trying to be more agile. It's like, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the flow of value. We're trying to improve our quality. We're trying to make more joy in our work. Those are the whys. And so the extent, I just think that's the part that we have to stay focused on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One interaction I had with a team recently, the first time I heard it, and they were talking about their sprint, and they said, well, what do the Agile police say? I'm like, oh my God, help me. That was scary. Who else has something to say about this?
I guess I want to build on my own comment a little bit, I guess, because I also want to acknowledge and bring empathy. People don't say because it's agile because they don't know what they're doing, because they've lost the point. It goes back to that first thing I said about it's all ultimately communication. It's all about shorthand and symbols and meanings. And so I think many times that those people are using a shorthand to say, well, agile is all this goodness. And so of course that's what people need to, we need to take the time to connect back to what the point is, ourselves and for the folks we're working with. And so don't use the shorthand. Get to the real reason, the thing underneath. And then when you do that, you won't get stuck in rigid, right? You get stuck in it opens the aperture of options. Well, if the goal is to, in this, whatever, we need to address quality, then the options of the ways to do that become more. I like more. More is more.
No, I think one of the other things to add on the rigidity comment, I have a allergic reaction to mechanical agility myself, and I've been guilty of it and helping implement it. I've tried to recover mostly. But I think one of the things that gets lost is the attention to who the buyer is and who's the user of agility. And there is an economic buyer. There is a leader out there somewhere that needs the impact that Agile promises and can bring to the table. But the users are the people in the teams. And if we're not, especially people in a centralized LACE, or if you're in any sort of centralized group with agility, if you forget about the very human impact and the usability of the Agile product that you're deploying, you're going to get a lot of pushback, and it's going to damage your success. And a lot of the rigid implementations, a lot of the mechanical thou shalt do it this way styles trample all over the agency and the self-direction of the individuals, frankly, that are using the product you're pushing. So I think a little more attention to the, call it the NPS score of agility or what have you. You might get a lot further out there.
Love that.
I saw a LinkedIn discussion around, I don't remember who posted it, around what to call a daily stand-up or a daily scrum. I'm probably mispronouncing it. And there was this, what's legal language and what's not. And everyone, and I just riffed off it. I talked about the daily lay down, the daily nap and things like that. I was just poking fun. But then when I seriously replied, I was like, who cares about it at all? I don't really care. But there's this like debate and there's lines and it's this rigidity. And that's part of it was disrespectful discourse, but it was also rigid discourse. And it was, I was like, I think we lost our way that way. And not only is that in the community, that's rippling into companies. That's rippling into company cultures. We're positioning it that way. We need to lighten up or something about our language and the terminology.
Dial down the dogma.
Yeah. Who cares? What does it really matter?
Yeah, like I personally wonder there's a developmental thing associated with some folks, they need a little bit more time. All right, so here's a question, probably mostly for Bob and Shannon there. What are the most notable trends or what provides the best value in Agile related education?
I'll start maybe with some observations and then Shannon can, because I'm going to miss some things. One, I think I'm going to equate education to certifications. Maybe 5 years ago, I had time on my hands and I counted certs, Agile certs, what's Agile in their name, and I came up with like 190 and I published that. A year and a half later, someone, Anthony Mercino in Chicago counted, he came up with 250 plus Agile-centric certifications. I think there's over 300 Agile-centric certifications now, probably 300 to 350. So that is a not a good trend, I would argue. So my hope in this case is, I hope a notable trend is we start simplifying. Can you imagine being a client out there trying to figure out how to educate yourself and looking at those options? So that's maybe a hope. Now, one positive thing I see is moving from certifications to more cohort-based training. As an example, Jeff Watts has put together some masterclass options in Scrum Mastery and Product Mastery. It's not really taking a hold because it requires a significant investment. So it's got a little bit of, sort of traction, but it's people have to get accustomed to it. So it's not just cost, but it's the time investment. I think you have to invest 6 months in a mastery path. And I'm seeing some of those same things in professional coaching. In fact, that's been in professional coaching. So that mastery, I think it's no longer good enough to take a 2-day, Scrum Master. That's not really education. It is, but it's not good enough when we're talking about skin in the game and things like that. But cohorts are starting to emerge. And I'm hoping people see the value and they invest in that. And they lean into that over the multi-day certs and gathering letters.
I just have to call out the comment I saw in the chat that Bob is certified at tracking all the Agile certifications.
I am,
Just earned
but
a
I am.
new distinction. Yeah.
It's actually officially, Shannon, I'm the Grand Poobah of global Agile certifications. So,
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and I think from my chair, we've always talked about how certification, similar to the framework, is a means to an end, or Agile is a means to an end.
Yeah.
So certification is the means to the end of learning and competency building, right? And being able to do something, do something better, be better at your craft, etc. Be able to elevate and mentor others, and so. I think when the certifications become everything, that's when things get really confusing, and really focusing on what is the learning, what are the new habits that we're trying to build. And I think definitely seeing the similar trend on the cohort-based learning. And I do think kind of thinking about, we were talking about the capabilities at the enterprise coach level. It's like some of these things you really do need time and experience to build, and being in something that's a cohort program helps you do that. It gives you a structure, gives you motivation, gives you accountability. And it's, and a lot of times I think Bob mentioned something about impatience earlier, and that's totally understandable as people are looking to advance in their careers. But the analogy I use is, you can't train for a marathon overnight. I mean, you can learn what you need to do, but you got to spend the time building the muscle. And so it's like looking at the education level. Foundational education is important, especially when you're looking to just develop shared understanding across an organization. And I think, we're seeing a lot of foundational concepts taking more of a whole organization approach, I think, as opposed to, software and product development. I believe that's been going on for a while. And I think some other trends, just in professional learning in general, if you think about where we were 4 years ago with remote learning and being able to facilitate a highly collaborative class, you might have thought, Agile Foundations class or a coaching class would have been impossible to deliver remotely. And of course, we don't believe that now. And so looking at how much the learning technology advanced in that time period, how much more on-demand learning is there to help people with their jobs. So how do we get more creative in terms of how we deliver education and make it available real time on the job to help people along their journey? So it's not just what we're teaching, it's how we're teaching, how frequently, et cetera. And then really looking at how can we help as we articulate what, if we go back to certifications, what are we actually certifying at what level? Is it intent to learn? Is it knowledge acquired in a certain subject? Is it you've actually demonstrated skill and capability? And then how does that help organizations know kind of what good looks like when they're looking to hire someone or develop folks internally? So that's obviously a topic I could keep going on, but I'm gonna here.
Real quickly, I wanted to add to this cohort just some terms. Like there's the notion of supervision. So you're getting expert guidance. It's not just me learning on my own. Practice. 40% is practice. So you want to be a coach? Practice coaching. Gain your chops. The other, mentoring in a lot of the cohorts, you establish relationships, mentoring relationships that sort of survive beyond the cohort. And it's peer-to-peer, that peer-to-peer learning. So those are some of the dynamics that really creates that deep learning.
And I kind of want to add to Bob's list, the one that we often overlook as part of learning is the sense of community. And when you're in a cohort-based program, you're in rooms like we are right now. This is learning path. This is education, hopefully for most of you. And back to Ronica's opening remarks, the lingo that we use in a closed environment in your kind of cohort, you can practice with the lingo. You can use the lingo. You can explore ideas. You can hash out the details of the why behind something like the chat stream is with the daily stand-up or over on the side right now. And then you can go out into the wild confident because you've had those conversations and have them without the lingo and start to bring people along and help people to see why it's important to bring focus and not meandering conversation into a daily checkpoint without using any of the lingo or time boxes or 30-second limits or anything like that. And that sense of community gets remarkably powerful because sometimes coaching, especially as you're coaching more senior leaders, is quite lonely. You don't have anybody in the organization you can talk to about these things without violating privacy or confidentiality. So don't overlook community.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the transformation I'm in right now, where I'm pairing with another coach and how invaluable that is. It really is just, wow, incredible. So there's another question, like, should we focus on getting back to basics of Agile? Or are we trying to embrace something new? How will the future be different?
I'm going to go back to my opening remarks. It's a yes and. The
Mhm.
basics are one of the dimensions we have to get really good at.
Yeah.
Like I see a worrisome lack of quality delivery by individual teams, of quality product ownership. And I see lack at many other dimensions through the infrastructure and DevOps pipelines, through the product-based thinking, through executive organizational skills like meeting habits. Like you can point a stick at anything in the organization and find some room for improvement. So yes, back to the basics and is kind of my answer.
Or never leave the
Yeah.
basics behind.
Don't
You know,
skip the basics.
when we hit, what is it, Chuha-Re, when we hit Re, it's not because we're like, oh, those basics, I'm out on that. Good thing I never have to do that again. You know, no. It's that you can do the basics with less effort, but they don't ever go away. And we all, you know, and we all as individuals and as collectives have, you know, moments where we you know, the thing we haven't been practicing, or if something got in the way or distracted us, we were like, I was doing this really advanced thing, but now I've been really struggling with this more basic thing. Let's put my attention back to that. You know, so going back to the continuous improvement idea, we're always looking for what is the next thing that would help us get better. Oh, we could actually, it's not the next thing is an old thing. Great. That's what we'll work on this month, you know.
Awesome.
Very,
So,
very often I think of, real quickly, I think of original XP teams from decades ago, and I recall what good looked like in early extreme programming teams. And I still aspire to, so it's basic practices, but it's also basic team dynamics. Some organizations have never experienced sort of basics or basics done well or basic excellence, and sort of expose that to them. So it's getting back to the basics. And if you don't have recollection of that, maybe trying to recreate that or go to another organization and observe it.
Or if you take it for granted and forget that it's not truth for other people. I was having that conversation about collaboration a day ago, and
Yep.
people in my career that wouldn't know good collaboration because they never been a part of it, but we're telling them to foster collaboration in the team.
Exactly.
That's huge, absolutely huge. All right, so let's widen the aperture a little bit here. Given the challenges the world is facing regarding climate change, conflict, and other global challenges, how does agility play in? What are you seeing as the impact it may have or could have?
I think I'm all over this one. I've had a personal vision statement that goes back to probably 2005 or 4, which is help everybody on a project sleep better at night. And I've updated a little bit over the years, letting go of the project word among many other little tweaks. But the core mindset and why I do what I do and the reason I show up to work is to help take stress out of the workplace, to help people leave the office feeling like they've done something good and still having energy to do good in the rest of their lives, wherever that good may land. And from my point of view, my personal belief system is if we help companies become better places to live and work, the people in those companies, often quite capable people with very high levels of agency, will go out and help solve some of these other problems in the world. So that's kind of been the driving force for why I've stuck at it and pushed some of these boulders uphill for the last 15 or 20 years.
It's a bigger game.
It really is. That's
Yeah.
the bigger impact for agility for me.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, and the fact that agility is it's not just about software development is my second career anyway. Like it already isn't where I started from, and so although I find it fun, um, I find it's just about so much more. So I when Eric and I were still working together, I had the great pleasure of working with the Nature Conservancy, right? So scientists literally trying to fix climate change and save our planet. And why was I getting to work with them? Because they felt the urgency of their mission and a real struggle that these scientists were having trouble collaborating, prioritizing, focusing, and it's just like we've got to get more done. There's a deadline, like they felt it so urgently. And taking the pain out of the work, right? I mean, it's the most rewarding thing ever. It's like, yeah, I want you all to work successfully too. And that means, that you work in a normal number of hours so that you're not killing yourself, so you can keep doing this mission forever. To see the impact of your work, I mean, just all the things that go with it, and it was fantastic. So to me, the impact on the big is easy to see,
Hmm.
so.
Who else has thoughts on this one? Okay, I'm going to ask one more question that we've got in our hopper, and then I'm going to turn it over and ask you folks to ask the folks that are on the phone, start putting your questions in now, so that way we can kind of pick and choose questions to give to our panel. So are there any disruptions or innovations you anticipate that will significantly impact Agile?
I can start with this, or try to. So AI is obvious to me. Now, the Bob Galen strategy for AI was to stick my head firmly in the sand and hope that this too shall pass. Um, and I'm still got my forehead in the sand, but I think I'm pulling it out, and I have to deal with it. But I'm starting to deal with it in terms like human-centric Agile, and what I mean by that. So there's an AI sort of disruption, but I don't think it's going to disrupt good people. Like we were talking about highly skilled, adept Scrum Masters and coaches. I think there's a complement there. We just have to grow the breadth and depth of our skills and have skin in the game. So that's something. Something we talked about, I characterize it as the slam fests in Agile is a disruption. The disrespect, Agile versus Agile 2, safe or not safe, scaling frameworks. And I think that's really that polarization is harming us. I think someone said that earlier, so that's an issue, and I think it's a serious issue actually. The other thing it's missing from it is I don't think we respect the shoulders that we've the folks that we're standing on the shoulders of enough over time. But there's folks like Jim Highsmith and Mike Cohn, and
I was actually on the call a
there's
little bit earlier.
yeah, but there's others. Jerry Weinberg. There's folks. David Hussman. I was talking to someone about David Hussman today. There's folks that we are standing on, and I don't hear them recognized much any longer. And that's another part of that. Let's respect the past to then springboard into the future. The roles versus skills. I think Shannon brought that up. I think that's a disruption, and we're navigating through that. And then culture shaping, I think it was Ronica, but my term for it is culture shaping. The responsibility, the lack of historical culture shaping between agilists and leaders and in organizations, and the need for us to collaboratively shape cultures, not in large scale ways, but in small, what I think of as micro steps. I think cultures are shaped in micro steps as opposed to macro steps, and that's a disruption that's continuing. Are just a couple of things that came to mind. And maybe there are innovations too. We're innovating away from old to new.
I would definitely say AI is a force to be reckoned with, and it's, hey, now's the time to think about ethical use and understanding it as much as we possibly can. How can we, leverage it for good, to bring, to achieve the business outcomes that we're looking to achieve more quickly. And if I think about it in relationship to Agile, it's not a divergence necessarily. It's really a continuum, right? Change accelerating even faster. And so organizations that already have cross-functional teams and have de-siloed and are looking to, have decentralized decision-making, be closer to their customers, et cetera, that type of thing is only going to help in the age of AI as well. So,
Shannon, are you saying I need to more quickly remove
keep
my
going,
head from the?
you're already to your
All right,
point.
all right. I'm just.
Stand up. Yeah.
I thought it was the right strategy.
Wow. I mean, it's that agility that we all have, that personal agility of adapting to a new world, right? It's what keeps me up at night too. All right, so I think we can delve into some questions from the folks that are attending here. So one of the questions, there's a fairly prominent school of thought among leaders of the community about the shift to go further than value, but actually defining it in terms of sustainable profits, not process. Let me be really clear on that. Profits. Curious to experience or reflect this shift, and any further thoughts you have as we, as leaders and practitioners, can help lean into this shift and help promote sustainable and profitable tech solutions through agility.
I've got a lot of opinions on this, but I don't have to go first.
Go for it, Eric.
Okay. I think the biggest thing I learned in this area around understanding value is to look at it from the perspective of a verb from the people you're talking to. And it's really easy for me and my beliefs for what the right answer looks like for the planet, for sustainability and everything else, to try to inflict those on the psyche of the leaders I'm supporting, and then believe that they will somehow act magically in alignment with that. And the humility I got was, the more I worked with senior leaders and executives, the more, one, I discovered they really cared and most of the stereotypes are wrong. And two, they're fairly powerless to do anything about it because value is defined by the owners of the company, which happens to be the board of directors and a bunch of people that own it with the pursuit of profit. And if you try to force the machine that is a company to take on a different definition of value than that ownership cohort wants, usually the company's culture and owners win and you lose. That was my painful experience, at least the several times I tried it. So yes, we need to up-level what value means. And frankly, my advice is, if you really care about value, work for companies that reflect your values, where the things you care about line up with what the leadership cares about, and awesome things happen as a result. Now, if you're talking about value in the sense of the value of stories and things like that, I can't answer that, but I'm not going to take the airtime to do so.
Well, I like what you just said, Eric. I mean, what you just described is that value is contextual, which I learned really early on when I did use the language of dollars to talk about value. But it turned out I was at the CIA and they're like, look, we're not in it for money here. Value, we're trying to protect the lives of our assets in the field, which turns out to be code for spies, which was really, really fun. And so that's when I learned, I was like, I had to take all that profit language out because that is not what they were about. And yet it didn't change anything about the practices I was trying to teach. It just changed how we defined value, how we decided what to work on first. So I yeah, to me, it's all context ultimately.
Well, I still have the recording on for the CIA comment, Ronica. I hope that's not a
No,
problem.
no, I'm allowed to say it. I wouldn't have said it
Okay.
if I weren't allowed to. I was an uncleared person working in a very uncleared environment because I had no clearance and still don't. I didn't want it.
I think what I
Also, it
heard
was
Eric
really long. It was a really long time ago.
I think what I heard Eric say, and I'm just going to change it for myself, is I think as agilists, very often we try to project our value, our definitions of value onto the client and try to convince them or train them. Instead of meeting them, there's this coaching tenet of meeting your client where they are as a starting point. Whether you like it, even if you don't like it, even if you think it's wrong, meet them in their value proposition and then move. And I do think that's a safer and a better strategy than trying to convince from afar or train or coach from afar.
Mhm. So leadership is being talked about a lot. This is another question somebody brought up. Leadership is being talked about a lot. Should we focus on supporting leadership change first?
Yes.
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 Yes, and ongoing and in parallel. Yeah.
And then yes, some more.
Yes, some more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could add just a personal anecdote to this as I think about my own journey leading an organization. It's like there's so many limitations. It's like I came to the conclusion that all the limitations I'm seeing in the organization have one thing in common, me. It's like you start things reflecting back. I'm like, oh yeah, this is constrained in this way because of something that I'm doing. And so you have to see yourself as part of the system and part of what's going on. And I mentioned leadership at all levels earlier. It's like getting everybody to really step into and develop their own leadership as well. I think it's important in terms of ownership and accountability and empowerment, all of those things. If people are looking up or looking outward and not looking inward, we're never going to get as far as we otherwise could.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one of the cohorts that I was in where this said the most effective tools for a change as a coach is yourself. Yep. Right. So next question. Knowing what you know now and have seen in your career and your lives with agility, what would you tell to your past self to do or think about differently? Where do you start, right? Maybe the biggest things. Let's start there.
It'd be weird if I said, there's a part of me that's like, I don't know, I feel like it went the way it had to. Like, I could say all kinds of things, like, well, I wish I'd known this sooner. I wish I'd known that. But I mean, I wish we had tackled scale sooner, better sooner, because there are lots of places all around where large groups of people have to collaborate in order to do something awesome or valuable or profitable. Just kidding. But I don't know. At the same time, I feel like we all worked it out together. Like, all right, great. We have this great thing. It works with small teams. Okay, how do we make that work in a big? I feel like we all figured it out together, and I could wish we did it faster, but why? I don't know. I mean, I wish everything was faster, but so I don't know. Is that a weird thing to say? I'm like, I don't know. It kind of went the way it went.
I like your thoughts on enjoy the journey. I myself, as I mentioned a couple times, I'm not an agile professional, but enjoying the journey of learning things and unlearning and relearning. Like I've had clients say, okay, we want a scrum master for 2 teams, but we also want them to coach executives. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I'll do whatever you ask or whatever you say. And then it was also like being more of that advisor of, hey, I've been to a couple of meetups and talked to some people and, why is it that you're doing that? So understanding the why behind things. I guess maybe that's just like my philosophy, and enjoying the journey. Veronica, I like just enjoying the journey.
Mhm.
I have more realizations that I think about. Things like I wish I would have realized earlier that I can't change. So for decades, I was trying to change people, um, and then I realized that I can't do that. So that was something that was. I wish I would have become more of a reflection artist earlier and reflecting on things. I would have learned quicker. I'm a little bit stubborn, a little bit pig-headed at times. Um, Another thing is tried to maintain simplicity. I think we didn't talk about it today, but I think things are overly complex beyond what the world requires. The essence of agility, to me, one essence point is the simplest possible thing that could work. And I think and that could be the simplest possible way of working, the simplest possible organization, but value streams, whatever. Uh, and reminding myself, maybe I don't have tattoos, but maybe putting a tattoo on myself that's simple, keep it simple, stupid, or something like that. So some basic reminders would have helped me.
I can't disagree with anything else that I've heard, either it kind of went the way it should or the specifics Bob shared, but one specific insight beyond the normal, like retrospective, oh, I could have done that differently on this engagement type reflection, is the notion that you can't care more than they care for themselves.
Yeah.
And trying to push agility or push any change and you wanting it more than the people you're asking to change, I've never seen work.
Yep.
And I could have saved myself a lot of boulders rolling down hills behind me if I had acknowledged that a little earlier in my life.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to circle back to conversation about hiring managers and certifications and stuff. So what do hiring managers think about the candidate having certifications, Mel?
Yes. So for my company, we work with like 6,000 clients. So I'm not going to I can't just talk about every single one of them. What I've noticed, especially in a competitive market, if you have the same skills as some other person and similar personality, because a lot of, the agile people that we've been hiring, it's a lot about that cultural fit, like we've been talking about. And so some of our clients require certifications. It's not common, but if you are similar to another person and that person has a certification, that does give them an advantage. And I know I'm not answering the question directly because there is no direct answer. I will say I've noticed an uptick in hiring managers valuing certifications. Um, but the most important thing across the board that I've noticed in the 6 years that I've been with tech systems is experience and having that hands-on experience. We're in the space of placing a lot of consultants for contracts or contract to hire, some full time, but they do expect people to hit the ground running. So that's a shift that I've been seeing of like the hands-on experience is instrumental. Um, so I know I didn't answer perfectly, but there is no perfect answer. And I'd be happy to talk offline about that too with whoever asked.
And just to add a little bit to that, I think, some folks I've spoken with look at it the way, and I tend to look at it this way as well, as if somebody has a certification in something, it does signal some skin in the game. It does signal some intent, some passion, some investment, right? So definitely a plus. And there's nuances and due diligence to be done and really looking at what does that signify, right? And I would also echo that, experience and being able to demonstrate what you can do is definitely key.
Quick question to Mel and Shannon. Is there a difference in the view of basic certs like Scrum Master and Product Owner versus some of the more advanced certs? So is there a distinction in recruiting or an impact or none, or are they all just roughly equivalent?
The most popular ones that I've noticed are a CSM and an SPC. Some of
Okay.
our clients do lean more towards the PSM, but really that's what we've been looking for. And I just had a conversation too, like the SPC is valuable to then bring that later on to coach the organization. You have to be certified to do so. And I know there's, I don't remember your number, Bob, but there's a lot of certifications out there. But the
Mhm.
one most widely seen and sought after, I would say, is a CSM and the SPC.
Okay,
From
thanks.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I don't think there's a lot of, I think there's room for more education to learning and development folks and hiring managers to really show that there are different levels. I don't think that knowledge is widespread across. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. So we had a question from somebody regarding what about finding a new Agile or Scrum Master type job in today's market? You know, especially if you're kind of new to the career, like what are the recommendations there?
I can jump in. So just again, realizing that the economy and the job market is more trying nowadays. And so what I've noticed a lot is I'm not saying something that people don't already know, but making those internal connections. Let's say you worked for XYZ company and you've decided, hey, I want to do agile. First of all, like we've talked about before, why do you want to get into agile? Is it because it's a buzzword to make a little bit more money? Like, why are you looking to be a part of the agile community and advance those skills? And then doing your internal networking is going to be huge. It's a very different conversation when someone reaches out a cold call. Trust me, I'm a recruiter. I know. Reaching out as a cold call or saying, "Hey, Ken Roberts said that you would be a great fit, or you would love to network, or could be a great individual to talk to." So the networking aspect is never going to go away. Like we talked about AI, there's all different things that you can use with that, but the personal interaction, in my opinion, is never going to go away. So using your internal network is going to be key, and just having the realization of it's hard right now. There's no way of dancing around it. Um, and partnering with recruiters and being that mutually beneficial partner is huge.
Who else has thoughts on um, helping new people in new Scrum
I think
Masters?
I
Yeah, go
think the
ahead.
key we talked about is experience, though,
Experience,
or
yeah.
chops. I think it's really so. My daughter pivoted from social work, 20 years plus of social work, into Scrum Mastery, junior Scrum Mastery, about 2.5 years ago.
Mhm.
And it was a hard slog for her because she was interviewing for positions without experience. Now I tried to finesse it, right? I tried to train her and coach her,
Mhm.
but and she found a role, and it was with the company was a special company that was open-minded to folks without experience. I think now it's 10 times harder of a slog for people with zero experience to pivot, even with with certifications and maybe some community work to pivot in there. It's probably the most challenging period of time that I've seen in 5 to 10 years. Um, I usually tell people to get into a holding pattern right now. If someone asks me for advice, my advice would be to go join some groups and to build up your chops rather than just keep trying to look for something, because it's just going to be too challenging. There's too much competition.
Yeah.
But
And just thinking about going in as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach without a lot of experience, that is a huge uphill battle. And a piece of advice is like looking for an organization that's committed to Agile ways of working on a team, seeing what that's like, truly experiencing it, and kind of growing from there also. I just saw that 10 years of experience with Chat GPT required.
yeah. Now, there are some real quickly creative ways. We talked about doing things for the planet. I mean, you could volunteer as a Scrum Master. You could go for a nonprofit. I've seen folks, churches, social groups are doing initiatives. There's opportunities like that. So to pave the way for an experience, to have some stories to tell in your resume and some stories to tell in interviewing. So I think there's opportunities to be creative in how you approach that. It would start with community. Who said Eric was really amplifying community earlier from a more mature practitioner, but I think community for everyone. Really lean into the Agile community.
Mhm. Welcome to Princeton Agility.
And don't overlook the opportunity to practice the skills and build those stories on whatever team you happen to be a part of, even if you don't have the title. Somebody commented there's no assistant Scrum Master. I'm like, no, actually everybody can be that. You don't
Yep.
need it as a title, but you can practice that.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think women in particular, history, sort of famously, if there's a job description and there's 10 things on it, and the woman's got 8 of those things, and she'll be like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm not even going to apply." And a guy's got like 5, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll fake the rest." And
Yep.
And I think so I think all these jobs, it goes back to something we talked about earlier. What's that part of the job that you're really passionate about, that you're really great at? Nurture that. I started doing the sort of training portion of what became an agile coach, agile consultant. I was working at a company where the person who was going to come teach us about agile flaked on us, and so I real quick developed a presentation comparing. Oh yeah, it's before rallies, before everything. I was working with. So I'm looking at Eric because he's smiling. I was working for Rachel Weston at the time, Weston Rowell. Anywho, I taught myself the basics of Scrum and XP and rapid application development. And I made a presentation and I taught others. And then we picked what we were going to do. And I was like, all right, I'll write a bunch of training material, and I'm going to do facilitative training. And I just jumped in to do it. I think my job title at the time was business analyst. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start doing that job differently because I want to do it in a way that looks a little more like this agile flavor I'm reading about, that seems a little more collaborative and blah, blah, blah. And so I found I didn't ever go to say, okay, well, now I want an agile job with an agile title. It's like, I want to do these things that are rewarding and also in my skill set. And I can weave a story about how these skills are things I've practiced going all the way back to my journalism days, which was my first career. Anyway, so I think making it about that, the essence of the job and the joy of the job, and less about titles, I think is part of how we get there.
Yes, actually, no.
Can I
Yeah, go ahead,
real
Bob.
quick +1? Ronica said something very powerful, weaving the story. I don't think a lot of folks are good at or comfortable with finding the story and connecting the dots to tell a story in a resume and in an interview. I think there's an art to that. So get help with that if you're not good at that. There's a lot of nuance in your history that you can bring to bear and create an agile centric story. You just have to see it there in your background.
That sounds like an excellent workshop for an agile community group.
It does weaving your story.
Weaving your story.
Well, one of the most powerful pieces of advice I got early in my rally days was find your 5 stories.
Yeah.
You don't need infinite examples. You need 5 that you are really good at connecting things back to. And little secret, they don't have to start out as yours. They could be other people's that you were
I
just
tell
on
one
the
of
edges
Eric's stories all the time.
I want to know which one, but maybe not here.
I'll tell you later.
Well, if you're offering up to provide that conversation that Bob just mentioned, talk to me.
I don't know. I'm writing it down. I'm going to build it. This is a facilitated exercise.
So now, I'm curious. I'm going to throw in a question. Like, now I've heard a little bit of Veronica's origin story. I'd love to hear a little bit about the origin story for the rest of you. Maybe not a lot of detail, but what was your origin story?
Who? Bob.
Eric, no, I want to hear yours, please.
Mine's didn't start out nearly as positive and aspirational as it comes across today. Mine was a lot of frustration with lost human potential. I was a developer. I was so frustrated with the environment around me. I wasted the first 3 years of my career on one project, and I refer back to that as when I learned everything not to do in software. And yet somehow we managed to get a product out the door. And that product helped the company, despite taking 3 years, for quite a while. And I started looking, it's like, well, I care about delivering. We started I didn't know about Agile at the time. We were co-inventing it on the side with there's a software engineering professionals in Indianapolis, Christian Cole and Matt Burke and I, and we came up with SPOFs, small pieces of functionality. And then later I discovered that Coburn had these cool little clams sized use cases, and there was these things called stories, and like, but fundamentally it's like, let's not take a year-long spec and pare it down. Let's write a little piece of functionality and get it out the door and then see if it works. And then it just kind of grew from there. And I found myself working more and more with leadership, not because I wanted to be an enterprise consultant and then a super enterprise consultant or anything like that, but because I kept pursuing the people that I thought could solve the problems that were keeping people from delivering. And it turns out I've been in coaching sessions with CEOs who use disempowerment language because the board is keeping them from doing what they need to do to fix the company. And we kind of just all need to work together. But that was my career arc, was technical and frustration leading to winning better lives for people and getting into Agile.
What about you, Bob?
So mine was software development. So again, this was in the early 80s, very early 80s, and software developer, then getting promoted, architecture positions, leadership positions into the early 90s. And so I was leading teams and developing products, and I was interested in different ways of working. So Agile surfaced at the time in the early 90s, mid 90s, and late 90s, and I started playing with it, experimenting with it with my teams and getting some successful results. And then as I coached, I was very people-centric, so it really aligned with my leadership style and gaining the results. And then I started doing coaching. So I came from a technical arc into coaching. So I never wanted to be an Agile coach. I just sort of emerged into an Agile coach out of leadership and out of technology. And so that was my path. I think the common denominators were great work. I have an affinity towards to the people doing the work. An affinity towards customers. I used to do a lot of customer interaction and handling customer disappointment and trying to resolve those things. And so Agile principles and baseline tenets really align well with like my personality type. And so, and that brings me to today.
I can share a bit there. I actually started out as a developer, as a software developer in a sort of the quintessential waterfall shop. It was one of the consulting companies that kind of nearly, invented and one of the reasons that waterfall was so ubiquitous in IT. And then I actually left and went to the Peace Corps. And when I was in the Peace Corps, I noticed, we certainly didn't have everything perfect, but one of the things that's different about Peace Corps' approach to international development from like the World Bank, the IMF, some of these larger organizations, is that it's very grassroots. And it's about finding the agents of change in your community, and the best solutions come from the people closest to the problem. And I 100% lived that firsthand as a small enterprise developer, and then sort of made my way back into the IT field, but didn't want to go back into technology because I felt like too much time had passed. Technology progresses so quickly. So I went into a BA role, and I was on an Agile team with a client that was adopting Agile. It was a while ago. Anyway, and it was just like, okay, the business and IT are gonna collaborate, and we're gonna do things quickly, and we're gonna work together to come up with a solution. I'm like, yes, that makes total sense. And it was sort of just went from there. I just knew that it was the right place and the right way of working, and just became more and more passionate about creating great workplaces, and really leaning into the best solutions come from those who are closest to the problem.
Awesome. Yeah, let's turn to you, Mel, too. Like, kind of curious about how you got engaged and involved with agility.
Me too. So I didn't want to be a recruiter. I don't know what I wanted to be. I was a sous chef to a personal chef trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I was like, I don't want to be a recruiter. Then I got the opportunity to interview. It was a referral, networking. And then I didn't get the job. And I said, "Oh, I finally decided I want to be a recruiter and now I don't get the job." I've faced adversity my whole life, so I was like, "Okay." And I said, "Why not? I would love to improve for future opportunities. I wanted to see where my gaps were." And the director was like, "Long story short, you have the job." So I moved into the recruiting job. Um, then I was doing some other types of skill sets, and I landed more in the functional space. And what we consider that is like PMs, BAs, and then the word agile. And my first day at Tech Systems in 2017, they talked about an agile session. And I was like, I want to learn, I want to develop. So I went to it and I had no idea what they were talking about, but I took notes. And so then I heard agile and they're like, you know what? You should be the agile recruiter. And I said, yeah, I should probably know what I'm talking about then. So then I found a user group. You might be familiar with it, the one we're in right now. And I just went to the user groups and I was very open and I said, I have no idea what agile is. I mean, I did some research, but I really didn't know what it was. And it was funny, the response when I first came to the meetups in person, they were like, oh, I work for a large pharmaceutical or large financial institution in Pennington. And people, I don't know if they necessarily, not that they didn't want me there, but I was a headhunter. Maybe I was going to take you guys away from your jobs. Maybe I was going to sell you something, or I don't know. I don't know. So I started going every month. I don't know, 2 years. For 2 years, and then I moved to Boston. That's a whole another story. So I got into Agile by just the willingness to learn, sharing ideas. And so and then some people are like, hey, would you leave tech to be a Scrum Master? And I was like, I don't know about that, but maybe that could have happened. And so I hate the word piggyback, but I'm doing it anyway. To go off of what everyone else has been saying is you have to want it and you have to want to understand. I was like, this is going to be a really bumpy road if I'm talking to people and I'm saying the wrong things and they're going to see right through me. And I don't know if you guys probably know this, but I don't have an IT background and most recruiters don't. Um, so just being able to figure out the market so I could be beneficial and have some good ideas. And then also learning what agile means. And I think we're all still figuring out, and I am too. But that is my journey.
Awesome. Love the origin stories here. All right, so let me see if I can distill this next question. It's kind of long. It's basically talking about working with the community to work and catalyze regenerative leadership. Where does one start when many leaders may have had agile weaponized against them? That's something actually I've seen in some organizations as well, where, it's kind of weaponized in some ways.
Where to start what? Where to start coaching, transformation?
It says, where does one start when many leaders may have agile weaponized against them? So, yeah.
I'll start with a really odd reaction. It's start with yourself.
Yeah.
So don't try to sell them anything. Try to show them, try to model agile done well.
Mm-hmm.
Try to show in whatever role you are, whatever skills you're bringing to bear. I think too often we try to push or try to sell or try to convert. If there's been damage, if there's been trauma in the system, then let the system heal a little bit and model and work on yourself. And ask yourself, are you modeling effectively? Are you showing results yourself?
Mm-hmm. Who else has thoughts on that one?
I just really love that answer,
Mhm.
Bob. It makes also, I think of, like, in XP, they always said, well, the practices are all meant to work together, but if you can't do that, look at your biggest problem, find the practice that will help you solve it, adopt that, and then, kind of see what happens next. And so taking that, not only a local, like a personal approach and a local approach and
Yep.
Incremental approach.
Yep.
And see, then we go back to, you don't have to use the word agile. That's not the important part.
There's an undercurrent in there that I value of start with the things you don't need permission to start. A lot of us look for like the sell or the get permission to go do this thing. It's like, well, I think there's a lot of things you can just do. Maybe not even talk about, or just talk about with a couple trusted peers and just start doing.
Mhm.
Well, there's another factor here I want to bring up is I've been in leadership roles in agile change agent, but an internal leader and hired coaches, and they would start pushing on me. And sort of I knew what they were talking about, and I would smile, and they would start trying to coach me or convert me. But the key point is I would observe them, and I'm like, "Are you practicing what you preach?"
Mhm.
And 9 times out of 10 they weren't. And so they were modeling, so their lips were saying something that their bodies were unwilling to deliver on. So there's that alignment. And leaders are smart, particularly if there's been trauma. I mean, they don't want you to just suggest. They want to look, are you practicing what you preach, is maybe what I'm saying. And try to practice what you preach.
Mm.
It's just thinking of that. I can't remember whose expression it is, but it's like people often teach what they most need to learn. So it's like if you can see that and assimilate it and start to model it, that can go a long way. But if you don't, then yeah, it's falling into that trap of why would I espouse what you're saying? You're not doing any of it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, so next question is regarding, I guess, a question, I don't know, for Mel or for others. Why are continuous improvement experts such as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches not sought after more in uncertain economic times?
I truly have just seen so much less opportunity available. So I don't know if it's ignorant for me to say that it can't just be agile, but it's throughout the market. Um, and pivoting, like the developers are doing the hands-on development and coding. And sometimes, within leadership and management, it's seen that people can function on their own, but that's not necessarily true. And finding out the hard way. But it's happening everywhere. It's not just within the agile community or like agile centric roles like RDE, Scrum Master, Agile Coach.
I'm gonna answer this from a different angle, and that is we apply a lot of cognitive agency to people that are going through a lot of stress, such as leaders when their company is going through deeply and uncertain times. And if you're spending the majority of your day or week trying to keep from having to fire or let go of half your team, you're not going to have a lot of energy left to go out and figure out how to hire the agile coach to fix things. Like that is so far from your mind that it's just not necessarily even a thought. So from an outside point of view, it's easy to look at it and say, yes, of course, this is when you should invest in the people who can navigate chaos best and change everything on a dime and proclaim themselves as experts on this. But the reality is you don't have the headspace for that. You're locked in the day-to-day. Your senior leadership has taken the field, your middle leadership has taken the field, and your primary focus is trying to keep everything from falling apart around you. It's hard for me to look at this as a question of why wouldn't they? It's more like, well, they just can't right now. Too busy. Sorry, is kind of my starting point. But it's a great philosophical question because I think it's dead on from that point of view.
It's hard to focus on other things when your survival's at risk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I think let's kind of move on to the wrap-up question. So for all of the panelists, what is one thing you would like people listening to take away from this session? What's the most important thing? I think we'll start with Bob and then go to Ronica, Shannon, Mel, and then Eric, if that works. So
Sure.
Cool.
I think I said it. I'm going to just repeat it because it's important, that balance between influence and skin in the game. So I want everyone to remember, get some skin in the game.
Mhm. How about you, Annika?
I don't have anything so pithy.
Uh,
uh, I want, I'm loving pursuing the cultural, really focusing on that culture aspect. So how do we, and I've been reading Gene Kim's latest book of, I don't know if it's his latest, but wiring the winning organization. And it talks a lot about sort of, let experts do what they're expert at, but how do you create the environment where work is easier? We're making work and the flow of value easier. And that's the thing. There we go.
Shannon, how about you?
Yeah, I'll say commit to the continuous learning, continuous improvement mindset, and then echoing what was said earlier, enjoy the journey. Work doesn't have to suck.
Okay. Mel, how about you?
I'm going to continue to say enjoy the journey as well and appreciate it. It's hard to say enjoy the journey right now in the climate. Let's be real. But appreciate it and appreciate the things that you have. And then things will turn up. I don't have a magic ball today or in a couple weeks or anything, but things have to improve. So enjoy and appreciate the journey.
How about you, Eric?
So Bob and Veronica took my first and second one, so I'm going to go with the easy one. Don't stop caring. The work you do is important. It's hard. Keep at it. Keep your spirits up. Enjoy the journey. Thanks, Mel, for taking the third one. And don't stop caring. What you're doing matters.
Love it. Wow, this has been a great conversation with you folks, and I love that. I think what we'll do is we'll circle to the outros now. So we'll do the same order: Bob, Veronica, Shannon, Mel, and Eric. Provide your contact information, promote whatever you'd like. Go ahead. Bob, go ahead and start.
Just agile-moose.com if you want to reach out to me. I'm not as intimidating as my moniker suggests, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome.
The welcomeelephant.co, or you can find me on LinkedIn. And one of my favorite things to do is do that culture building and agile teaching by facilitating big strategy meetings in which we get to practice the culture, learn and practice with feedback the culture we're trying to create.
Awesome.
So,
Shannon.
Yeah, so Shannon at icagile.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn also. Happy to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Mel.
Yep. So Melanie Ossie on LinkedIn and M Ossie at techsystems.com. If you'd like to talk about hiring, talk about new opportunities, how to navigate anything relating to work and personal, everyone needs to have a chat. So, yeah.
Okay, Eric.
Eric at ericwillicky.com to keep it nice and simple. Hit me up on LinkedIn. And if you are willing to take an action out of this, I would love, as part of a connection message, for you to tell me your biggest insight out of this session so I can learn back from you.
Love it. Love it.
+1. Yep.
Yep. So don't forget, Princeton Agility, we are looking for folks to do lightning talks in a couple months. We are also looking again for some co-organizers, so reach out to us. We did put the Slack in the chat, and let me see if I can pull it up again. Where the heck did I stick it? I know it's here because I just had it a minute ago. Well, here we go. And wow, Bob, Veronica, Shannon, Mel, Eric, thank you so much for some really awesome conversation. Really insightful. This has been incredible. Thank you so much. And hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Good seeing
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Thank you for all the engagement. So fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great night.
Yep. Take care, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Bob, for letting us use the Zoom.
You're welcome, Ken. Do you need me to leave it up for a while, or is
Hey,
it
Tina.
I'm gonna save out the meeting chat just to make sure we got that captured in case somebody
okay?
wants.
All right.
And then we could probably bail after that. Click save chat. I think it goes into like a Zoom folder.
Yvonne, hi.
Yeah. Do we want to end the recording as well? Whoever's got it?
That's probably good to do.
Yeah.